Good evening, I'm Liz Barnes, and tonight I'm joined by one of the most versatile guitarists around. Someone who's worked with the likes of Janet Jackson, Rihanna and Paul McCartney, to name just a few. He's back with his band, Extreme, now though, and they've just released their first studio album in 15 years. My guest tonight is, of course, Nuno Bettencourt.
Peers and heroes of mine like Tom Morello and Vi, all these guys, we get together every once in a while at the coveted Rainbow, and we have these kind of like rock metal nights, you know, and we talk about like, what's your Mount Rushmore of guitar players or singers in rock or singers in pop? Like, we just go through them and we argue them.
We'll hear a track from their new album a little later in the show, but let's start with something from the band's massive 1990 album, Porno Graffiti. This is Wholehearted. The best place for me to start, Nuno, is to say welcome to My Planet Rocks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me on your planet, actually.
Well, I think you've been on Planet Rock probably since it began in 1999, and you know, by then you were you know, you'd earned your stripes, so to say. But I mean, at the moment, it really is a good time to be you, and it's a good time to be Extreme, because the new album 6 is out, and there's a lot of noise really sort of surrounding how great it is just to have Extreme back.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. You know, like we were joking about, let's talk about 99 or 91, you know, back then, back in the 1900s, to know somebody liked something or liked what you did, it took 6-7 months of touring, ticket sales, if radio was playing it, if how it charted, if how the press felt about it. Now you post something, you know, we release a single, and within 2 hours, my phone is blowing up, and I'm like, well, what is happening here? And then it's just 24 hours, 48 hours, people all over the world let you know instantly what they think of you. And I think that's a good and a bad thing, especially if they don't like you. But in this case, we've been very blessed, and at the age of turning 57 this year, I'll take it.
Well, I mean, I just think that at the time, you know, sort of I was starting to buy music in the early 90s. You know, I've still got my limited edition 12-inch copy of More Than Words. You know, I've barely opened the little cardboard thing because I didn't want to mess it up, you know. Like, I wanted to keep it pristine. And I mean, I remember how much love there was for the band, because you were kind of... You had the sound that a lot of other people had, but you also had like that thing that a lot of other bands didn't have at that time. You had just a little spark.
What's great about the UK is one of my favorite things is about the fans there. What makes them so special to the band is that we only broke really in the US with More Than Words, which was fine. But to break would get the funk out in the UK, and to be recognized and to be as a rock band first there was a huge difference in how it felt. It was something that we'll never forget, because one of the few places, if not the only places, it happened that way. So that was really special, and it's always been a great relationship with the fans there, you know.
We've got a great list of tracks that mean something to you to listen to over the next hour or so. Eddie Van Halen has got to mean a lot to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the last, I don't know how many years, a few peers and heroes of mine like Tom Morello and Vi, all these guys, we get together every once in a while at the coveted Rainbow, and we have these kind of like rock metal nights, you know, when everybody's on, and we sit there for hours and we debate and we talk about like, what's your Mount Rushmore of guitar players or singers in rock or singers in pop? Like, we just go through them and we argue them, you know, and my Mount Rushmore guitar players have always been kind of the same. It's always been, you know, Brian May, you know, and they've always been guitar players, ironically, that are in great bands. Brian May and Queen, and Edward Van Halen and Van Halen, and Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin. None of them are really at number one because they're so different. But Edward was a big part of how I play, and he basically changed the way we all played in 1978, and rocked the guitar world. And Brian and everybody before him. That's the interesting thing. It's not like just generational, where Hendrix would influence that generation, somebody else would influence. No, even the guys before him were like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. Like, what is going on here? What is that? What is he doing? It was so innovative.
As chosen by my guest, Nuno Bettencourt, on My Planet Rocks tonight. You just heard Van Halen and I'm the One. And I love hearing you talk about other guitarists, because I've seen you live and I've seen other people watching you going, have you seen what he's doing? You know, so is it still kind of fascinating to you that people watch you that way?
It's always been fascinating. But like I told you before, technology has now put it on our phones and our laptops, like the reaction videos, the people giving their, I don't read comments because, guitar players and musicians are a broken breed, in the sense of like, it feels so good when they tell you how great you are. And then you get that one guy's like, nah, you suck. This album sucks. And that's it. It messes up your whole day, your whole week. And so I don't really read comments that way. But lately, my manager's like, you have to read the comments. You have to go and see what people are saying about Rise and about you playing and about, and I'm like, okay. And it's been incredible. Like, there's videos coming out of people that I really admire, and your heroes are hitting you up saying, hey, you raised the bar, and the solo from Rise went viral. And I thought, but wait a second, something else is going on. They're starved for it. I believe that it's like seeing a guitar player in a band. It's kind of a reminder, not fresh in a way, but a reminder of maybe what we're missing, of what people are starved for, and what people are missing in the guitar world in that way with harmonies. And what's missing here, there are great guitar players everywhere. There are great bands still out. I don't want to be snobby and go like, we're the ones. But I think what's missing is the mythology of rock and roll. I think the videos show that kind of fun and the joy and the passion of a rock band just rocking out.
You mentioned Brian May a couple of times. That made me think, well, look, you've got some Queen on your list, and you've chosen Ogre Battle from 1974's Queen 2 album. What's your relationship with Brian May? Because you have been friends for a long time, and he's a good guy, isn't he?
Yeah, look, I mean, if there was good guy was in the dictionary with a photo somewhere, that's good guy. He's a sweetheart. He's so, sometimes when you meet your heroes, you get really scared if it's going to be a bad thing because you don't want to listen to their music differently. Brian is one of the few, if not the only guitar players that knows what he does, and he can be, he can put you in your place, which I'm sure I've seen him do it on his Instagram and things like that. But he's also the most giving. He's done so much, and he's changed the game so much that it's one of those things where you're like, he's Brian May of Queen, and he's been voted so many times as one of the greatest of all time, if not. And it's still hard to talk to him because he's Brian May, and he's been such a great friend, and he's been such a sweetheart to me. And he's like that with everyone, with Edward and Tony and his heroes and the people he admires. But it's amazing that he's such an icon, and he's such a good player. And he's probably one of the greatest things you can say about Brian May is, yeah, he's great technically, but he's memorable. He's one of the few guys that the second he hits a note, one note, you go, that's Brian May.
Queen with Ogre Battle, chosen by Nuno Bettencourt on My Planet Rocks tonight. And on the way, Nuno talks about the challenges of working with such a variety of artists.
When somebody like a Rihanna reaches out to you to perform, everybody thinks pop artist, whatever. Let me tell you something. What I had to do night after night, I'm sorry, most of the guitar players who I admire could not in their lifetime play that gig.
That's on the way on Planet Rock. Chosen by my guest on My Planet Rocks tonight. It's Nuno Bettencourt. Nuno, we were talking before we started recording, and you were talking about finally getting to play at Fenway Park with Aerosmith last year. You must have just grown up with Aerosmith in your blood.
Yeah, I mean, they were from our area. I mean, Joe Perry grew up 10 minutes from my house. He was a generation before me, so we didn't hang out, but he played like my high school before I was in my high school, that kind of stuff. You know, Aerosmith did. Aerosmith was playing high schools. That never really was the reason why. It was just a bonus. The reason why I loved Aerosmith is an iconic, because they were the American Rolling Stones for us. Get Your Wings, that album represented something huge to me, and I used to just stare at them. A photo, something about it. And it's interesting because Queen 2 had the same thing, had this iconic photo, which inevitably became that whole Bohemian Rhapsody, that Mick Rock iconic image. And Aerosmith, I used to stare at bands that did that. And Aerosmith on Get Your Wings had that same kind of photo. They were sitting and they were all draped on each other. And I would just stare at it for hours and wonder what they were like and what it would be like and to be in a rock band and all those things. So it was, once again, the mythology, like I mentioned earlier, what maybe is missing these days. That's what we used to dream about and wonder about. Where now with social media, I can't unsee one of these guys scrambling eggs. I don't want to see that. I don't want to know too much. I don't want to see. It's like everybody's so pressured in socials. We got to give them content. We got to give them something. We got to talk about them. Tell them this. Tell them Nuno, play the solo before it comes out on Rise, which I didn't do. And I things that I refused to do. But it's in a time where mystery and mythology played such a big role when a band, when you bought a ticket and you had to wait. So imagine waiting till they got there. Now you're like, I'm going to wait to buy the ticket because they open in Texas tonight. And I know that I'm going to see the whole set list, and I'm going to decide whether I want to buy a ticket. So it's really different. Aerosmith was that kind of mythological figure that made me want to be rock and roll.
Chosen by Nuno Bettencourt from Extreme, who is our very special guest on My Planet Rocks this week. You have worked on so much more than Extreme during your career, and there aren't many people of your generation who have managed to kind of have that diversity. But when I was reading back through your biography, I was thinking, I'd forgotten that he did that with Janet Jackson. And oh yeah, of course he did. But from everything you've been saying so far, it's that diversity that really keeps your flame lit, for want of a better phrase.
I think that's a great, a great analogy of it is, I think everything that I had done that I grew up in, which was really, being the youngest of 10 kids, first of all, it starts there. You cannot have a more rock and roll musical university than being the youngest of 10 kids, because you're not just brothers and sisters, you're generationally moving. You're walking into one room and hearing things from the Beatles in the 60s, and then going into another room and hearing what's current with Van Halen 1. So when somebody like a Rihanna reaches out to you to perform, everybody thinks, oh, that's kind of cute. It's pop artist, whatever. Let me tell you something. What I had to do night after night and put on a reggae hat with a reggae feel, and go into R&B, and then go into kind of some punk rock and pop rock that she did, and then club tracks and all those different feels. I'm sorry, most of the guitar players who I admire could not in their lifetime play that gig. And I mean that in the most complimentary way possible, meaning that Slash is the greatest Slash of all time. And he's one of the greatest rock guitar players of all time. But I guarantee you, and he'd be the first to tell you, that if he jumps up and he's got to play a clean, funky intro to Rude Boy from Rihanna, it ain't happening. Don't judge things. Don't judge genres of music. There's nothing worse than being part of the Music Olympics, when people tell you CC DeVille from Poison sucks as a guitar player and he's the worst guitar. And I'm like, is that so? Is that so? I mean, music doesn't have those kind of ratings. It should never. And he's the best guitar player that plays within the realm of their culture. And I've seen them live, and they throw the greatest party, and they do what they do like nobody else. So when somebody says somebody sucks, you can say you don't like it, but there's nothing more arrogant than somebody saying, oh man, that guitar player is the voted worst of all time or greatest of all time. It doesn't work that way.
Do you know what? there's one band who I was a little bit surprised to see on your list, you know, for no other reason other than I would just have never connected the dots between Rush and Nuno Bettencourt.
The good thing about music, I equate music to food because it's taste, right? And sometimes Rush is like a piece of sushi, and it takes a minute. I get somebody from the East Coast to come out and they're like, oh man, I tried sushi, I'll never try it again. I'm like, listen, I know somebody played you the wrong Rush song. I get it. And they played you, I Think I'm Going Bald off of Caress of Steel, which you're never supposed, that's not Rush in a way. So, you know, but then I take them to a good restaurant and you kind of, they need to be guided sometimes into how to eat sushi and how to listen to Rush. And by the way, you never have to like Rush ever in a lifetime. But if it connects with you, boy, look out. Once it's in there, you're like, uh-oh. It's like seeing the Matrix. You're like, uh-oh.
We don't have too many tracks left, Nuno, to talk about, but I am going to go to the Eagles next, because I know you're in California at the moment. Why Hotel California? I mean, the Eagles, I think, you know, again, sometimes they get overlooked by people because it's like, oh, they're the Eagles, they're like a legendary band, whatever. And then you listen to them and it's like, oh, God.
Yeah, there's a catalog. There's an Eagles catalog that everybody knows every song, but they forget it's all them. It's like their greatest hits is ridiculous and very diverse as well. As a song, Hotel California is probably their most iconic song. So it's kind of obvious, and it's kind of like people are going to go, really, Nuno, you're going to choose an Eagles song and you're going to go the most obvious one? Yes, but not because of the song. The song is a great song. It's an anthem. Everybody sings every lyric. But what's really special about this song is the end of the song, the guitar solo. The guitar solo, to me, it's right there. Right, I'm going to go with the greatest guitar solo of all time. The solo itself is as long as the damn song. It's so long. But you could sit there and sing every note of this solo like you're singing a song. It's the most memorable, iconic, the harmonies, the conversation of it with both guitar players going back and forth is iconic. It's tasty. The tone of it, the sound of it. It's the perfect guitar solo.
We've mentioned the new album a couple of times, but we really need to talk about it a little bit more before we let you go. You know, is it a comfortable place to be? Because you are a guy who, you have that huge swathe of creativity, but getting back in extreme, what's that like for you?
It's a love-hate, right? It's always a love-hate because we're brothers. You know, we're brothers in music. We're not brothers in family. People confuse that. And I think that's where bands get into trouble. I think when bands go on a mission together and they're so together all the time and they start this journey, I think it gets skewed. Reality gets skewed that we are actually brothers, like blood brothers. No, we're not. And I think it takes decades to figure that out because you take things so personally, like family. You take things like, when things start changing and shifting and success comes in, the dreaded success, that everybody wants, but then all of a sudden you're kind of making enough money that you don't have to deal with him anymore, or you want your voice heard more because you think you're more important now because of the success and all that stuff. All the things you dream about end up being the kryptonite that you kind of worry about. It's been the same story for decades. I don't even need to bore you with it. It's every band that ever exists. But I think what's beautiful about it is that we're brothers in a way where we're in a way that we can't be in real life, which is this kind of fantasy and this kind of journey and this mythology that we're in together. We get to be these superheroes together. It's kind of like we're kind of a Knights of the Round Table that get together every once in a while. And once we realize that don't take it personal, that he's going to betray you one day. And this guy's going to say something about you. And this one's going to say that. And Freddie Mercury said it best. A way a band is at its best and does its best work and its best creativity is when they're on the edge of just breaking up. Because that's when the good stuff comes. that's when everybody's pushing and pulling and telling each other to go F themselves and like, I want my son. And then you come together with this album that you're like, oh, damn, this thing had to earn being here. This wasn't just like, yeah, okay, man, yeah, throw it on there. Yeah, I like that one. No, this is like tooth and nail, fighting for every song. 4 songs fighting for the first position. Every song that's on this album had another 3 or 4 fighting for that position. And how you end up with this album is you don't end up with your favorites. You don't end up with the ones with the best solos. You don't end up whatever. You end up with the ones that you cannot take off the album.
I sort of feel like we should end on playing Rise, just because, you know, the feeling of the track and everything you've just said.
Oh, that's why you get paid the big bucks in what you do, because I didn't even notice that that's what it's about. It's the be careful what you wish for. It's that God of fame, that God of the rise and fall. And it's okay to rise and it's okay to fall. People, it's amazing. So that's what Rise is about. It's just like, you know, we're going to lift you up and straight to the top and rip you down. And you got to be ready for that, but we never are.
Nuno, I hope that I speak for, well, I know that I speak for so many Extreme fans across the UK who are so thankful that you guys are back. Not only are you back with an excellent album, but we get to see you on tour in November, and I will be there. And I know thousands of Planet Rock fans and listeners will be as well.
Oh man, we are so excited. We don't tour there enough, and hopefully we'll change that and start coming back more and not wait 15 years, maybe 13 years on the next one. We'll trim off an extra 2 years. Now, listen, we already have a title for the next album. That's a good sign.
This is good news. That is good news.
We're excited to see everybody there, man. We cannot wait. So many of the shows are selling like crazy there, and some of them will be sold out. And we can't tell you, we don't take that for granted. We don't expect that. Just like any of the success that's happening with the album, ticket sales, the love, it's like that is something that leaves us speechless when the band gets together and talks all the time. We're so blessed by our fans, man. I can't tell you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Nuno, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you on My Planet Rocks. You have to come on again.
Please have me on. Hopefully we'll see you at one of the shows out there.
From their amazing new album 6, that's Extreme with Rise on My Planet Rocks. And don't forget, you can see the band when they head to the UK for a tour in November and December this year.